Hi everyone, Heather here with Astrology with Heather.com, and I am back with another weekly forecast. This one is for Monday, November 19th, all the way through to Sunday, November 25th of 2018. And we have yet another big week in the astrology. Mercury just stationed to go retrograde, or actually it's stationing right now as I'm recording this to go retrograde in a really tight square actually with Neptune. And so this is bringing a lot of sort of fogginess, confusion, sort of, for some people it can be bringing maybe this ominous energy, a free-floating sort of sense of anxiety where you don't really know where it's coming from, where it feels like something's about to happen and then, you know, usually it doesn't actually happen. And so we have sort of some weirdness already at the start of this week because of that Mercury station. Mercury's not going to be moving very quickly at first, and it's going to be stationing in square with Neptune. And so that energy is going to be pretty prevalent all the way through to the start of, you know, Monday and Tuesday, I would say. And then after that, you know, we have Mars in Pisces, which Mars just moved into Pisces last week on Monday, which is going to be squaring Jupiter. And this is another energy where it's very difficult to see things clearly. This is an energy where we might be overly ambitious about something or have ambitions or take action that's a little bit excessive where it's not necessarily meeting what's realistic in terms of what we can accomplish, or we might overdo something and step on somebody else's toes. We might become overly aggressive, right? When we're talking about the energy of Jupiter, we're talking about expanding on something. And in square, usually it expands on our hopes, dreams, and expectations, involving the planetary energy that is on the opposite end of that square. And so when you have Jupiter square Mars, it's obviously a much nicer energy than Jupiter square, or than like Pluto squaring Mars or something, right? Because Jupiter is the great benefic. So even in difficult aspect with another planet, it's still going to be bringing a lot of benefits through that planetary energy. So there's potential there for you to finally get the courage and the optimism to jump into something that you really want to jump into. There's potential there for you to sort of exercise your willpower and strengthen your willpower to a certain extent, and to just, you know, feel more optimistic, feel more ambitious, but just, you know, knowing that with all of this sort of Piscean energy and Neptunian energy floating around, especially with Mars being in Pisces, we might not live up to our own expectations. Our ideals might not necessarily reflect what's going on in reality. We're going to be acting out of like love, compassion, this sort of romanticized version of reality that maybe isn't true to what's really going on. And so that can cause a lot of problems, and that can definitely cause, especially later on down the line after, you know, everything is said and done, these moments of disillusionment where it's like, I did this thing, I thought it was going to turn out this way, and wow, I was so wrong. I wasn't seeing things clearly, right? This also brings a lot of confusion potentially about what action to take and how to take it, right? That's Mars and Pisces in general. It's a very confusing, sort of disorienting placement from Mars, where we can get caught up in the excitement of somebody else's energy, somebody else's excitement for some sort of, you know, project, some sort of endeavor. And we might decide that we ourselves want to embark on whatever it is that they're doing, right? Because we're caught up in their passion and their excitement. And then again, later on down the line, we might realize we overshot. Maybe this wasn't the thing that we wanted to do after all, and we were just caught up in the moment, caught up in the excitement. So just be very careful this week in general in terms of decision making. I would not recommend making any sort of impulsive decisions. If it's something that you're revisiting and it comes up and you need to take action really quickly, then yeah, that's, you know, appropriate with Mercury retrograde and all of that. If you need to sort of rectify a situation from the past, and it might come up really quickly and really abruptly, especially this week and next week, because this week is highlighting sort of a precursor to the energy of next week with the full moon that's happening in the sign of Sagittarius. So next week on Monday actually is when the first the only Mercury square to Mars during the retrograde, but the second square from Mercury to Mars is going to be taking place. And that energy is really being highlighted by this full moon in Gemini, with the, you know, the sun moves into Sagittarius on the 22nd, which is Thursday. And so this full moon in Gemini will actually be at the 0 degree of Sagittarius and the 0 degree of Gemini. And so the 0 and 1st degree of any sign is the most concentrated energy of that sign, where it's very pure and very focused. And so this is going to be a very Gemini full moon. And what I mean by that is that, again, things might not appear what they seem to be. Normally Gemini isn't always a trickster, right? It can be playful, flirtatious energy. It can be very good for socializing, right? And connecting with groups of people, connecting with your friends, you know, going out there and doing anything that's social really is favorable with the full moon in Gemini. But in this particular circumstance, this full moon is forming a T-square with Mars, which is in Pisces, which is coming into a conjunction with Neptune, which is stationing this week also. So there's that weird, eerie Neptunian energy. And so if you have any planets at the middle degrees of the mutable signs, so Pisces, Virgo, Sagittarius, or Gemini, you're going to be feeling that Neptune stationary energy, which is going to bring a lot of weirdness, a lot of strange energy, and a lot of sort of strange, unusual circumstances, a lot going on behind the veil, you know, sort of in the ethers. You might even feel like you're going kind of crazy because you're sensing and picking up on so many things that you normally wouldn't be picking up on. And it's kind of like, what's going on here? And so it can be a little bit unnerving and unrattling and very ungrounding to have Neptune stationing, you know, near any of your personal planets. And, you know, this is also being highlighted again by this full moon. So there's a lot going on here. So the full moon will be occurring on the 22nd. And so this is going to be the culmination of the energy that was seated at the time of the new moon, which was in Scorpio. And so, you know, thinking back to 2 weeks ago and what was going on for you at that time and what was going on globally at that time as well, which, you know, we discussed pretty in depth in my video with Robert Phoenix that we did for this month. We also talked a lot about this full moon because, you know, it's kind of a weird one. There's a lot of strange sort of tricky trickster energy going on here. And so there's a potential here where we're not seeing things clearly, where we might be, you know, even manipulated or lied to with that Gemini energy that is, you know, the shadow side of Gemini. And this is a very concentrated Gemini energy. So Gemini is an energy where, you know, if people have strong Gemini in their chart, they can show up to be whoever they need to be in any given social situation, but they can also use that power to connect with people and to like gain their trust and all of that for, you know, bad things. And so that's, again, not every Gemini does that. Most Geminis don't do that. But when we have difficult aspects like this, you know, there is that potential. So you do have to be aware, right? So you know, forewarned is forearmed. So if you have a really strong connection to this full moon, it might be that, you know, there's something going on here involving trickery. There's something going on here involving somebody potentially. It could be the culmination point of something that you started during that new moon in Scorpio, but it could be that you need to take action on something very quickly. And this could bring a lot of really impulsive, sort of confusing actions that people are taking. People are going to be all over the place. This is a week where a lot of us are going to be like space cadets out floating around, not knowing what's going on, just doing things all impulsively. There's a lot of confusion, a lot of weirdness, a lot of overshooting, and a lot of boundary issues coming up this week as well. So this is going to be an interesting week. It's not necessarily as turbulent as the past couple of weeks, but it's pretty intense, to be honest. So that's sort of what's going on this week, you guys. I mean, Gemini energy, it can be really good for initiating something with this Mars square that involves connecting, socializing, marketing, communication with groups of people. I guess not initiating something, but revisiting something, right? Because that's Mercury. Mercury actually rules this full moon, and Mercury's in retrograde right now on the opposite end in Sagittarius. And so this could be a good time to revisit something that you need to take action on, you know, involving those Gemini themes, if that's something that you're so inclined to do, especially if you're taking action out of a place of love, compassion, connectedness, right? Charity, that type of energy. That's the best use of Mars and Pisces. Whereas on the opposite end, people might want to escape from reality, escape from their responsibilities, escape from having to, you know, take action, make decisions. And that might actually be kind of a good thing, because the action and the decisions that we're making, the action that we're taking might be a little confused, right? That's the energy of this week. It's very confusing and all over the place. And so, yeah, so if you have something really important that you need to do and you have to do it, you know, great, go for it, especially if you are revisiting something. It, you know, might not turn out in the way that you think it will, but it'll turn out in the way that it needs to turn out. But otherwise, this is, you know, a week to just kind of keep going. keep moving forward with what you're doing unless something comes up that really causes you to need to change something or to do something new, because people are going to be acting very impulsively, and I think the end results are not going to be long lasting, and they might not be what people think that they are. All right, and so let me just look at this chart real quick, make sure I didn't miss anything super important here. So yeah, so I mean, this is going to be highlighting the energy of that Mars Mercury square, which we'll talk about really in depth next week, which is going to bring potential for arguments, disputes, impulsive decision making, and action taking, which, you know, is not the best thing during Mercury retrograde, because, you know, arguments and disputes can lend to a lot of misunderstanding. If you're revisiting an old argument or miscommunication, which can come up this week as well, then that's fine, because you might be able to find some clarity to internalize it a little bit more, to sort things through. But really, this week and into next week, especially this week, people in America are having Thanksgiving, so we're going to be with our families, and there could be a lot of miscommunication and a lot of sort of arguing at the dinner table, that type of thing that could come up. And so, you know, just be aware of that. Really think about things before you speak. Even if your intentions are good, it can be taken in the wrong way, because you might be speaking very bluntly, very upfront, very directly, and it can come across as being kind of abrasive. The language can be confusing and disorienting and all of that to other people. So you just want to be cautious of the language you're using. Be cautious of, you know, jumping into anything new, especially. Everyone right now is going to be more prone to deception and disillusionment. The veil is like over our eyes. We're wearing those rose-colored glasses. We're not seeing things clearly. So that's the biggest energy of this week, and, you know, next week as well. All right, so let's get into the forecast for all 12 signs. But before I do that, I do have a quick announcement. So I do have my holiday gift certificates on sale now. You can find them through my website. The website link is in the description below, and they're super cute. I got some paper ones this year too, so you can, you know, send an actual real gift certificate, or, you know, get it and put it as like a stocking stuffer or something along those lines. So you can have something, you know, real and tangible to hand to people. And, you know, I have these really cute sort of glittery envelopes that I don't have next to me, that they come with. So you can get a real tangible gift certificate. You can get my normal digital gift certificates. And those are actually going to be on sale for 10% off beginning on Tuesday of this week. So that's going to be on the 20th, all the way through to Tuesday of the following week, which will be the 27th. So for that week, all my gift certificates are going to be 10% off. So you can, you know, find that in the link in the description below, and, you know, get your holiday gift giving done. And I have options for single question, 30-minute and 60-minute readings. So for, you know, every budget and all of that, whatever it is that you want to give someone. But anyway, so that's what's going on right now. Also, I'm working on my Sagittarius monthly newsletter. I'm putting out a monthly newsletter where I talk about the astrology for each month and give a short rundown for each of the 12 signs. And if you want to sign up for that, the link is in the description below. And you'll get, you know, free astrology info in your inbox that you won't find anywhere else. And you'll also, if you sign up for my newsletter, I always forget to tell people this, but you get $10 off your first reading with me. And so, yeah, that's in the link in the description below as well. So let's get down to business, guys. We have kind of another crazy week, and I want to make sure that we cover all of it. And so first and foremost, let's start with Aries and with Aries rising. So for Aries, this full moon energy. So let's start with the square that's going on here with Jupiter. Well, this is part of the full moon energy. Let's do it as a whole. See, we have Mercury stationing in the skies right now, and square with Neptune, and I'm confused. I'm like, where should I start? What should I talk about first? There's so much going on. It's very disorienting. So anyway, so with Aries and with Aries rising, this full moon energy is going to be happening in your third house. So this is the culmination of something that was potentially seated in the ninth house involving education, travel plans, some sort of energy around your beliefs about God, the universe, the world around you, the bigger picture. And now you're coming back into balance by filling in the details. This could be the culmination point of anything involving communication, marketing, you know, travel, even vehicles and things like that. You know, that type of energy could come up for you this week. This could also be an energy around communication or miscommunication. And it could be that, you know, maybe somebody said something to you or you made plans and the details were not filled in. So it was kind of more broad and big picture. And so, there could be arguments, disputes, difficulties that are coming from this energy here. But mostly this is going to be about you trying to come back into balance, right? And so with this energy with Jupiter and Sagittarius in the 9th house squaring Mars in the 12th house, this could be a time where you really want to embark on sort of a new journey in terms of your spiritual practices, in terms of your creative work, in terms of maybe making some long distance travel plans to go on some sort of retreat or spiritual retreat, or to, visit a foreign country or something along those lines as well. And maybe you're a little overly ambitious as to what you can accomplish during this trip or what you can accomplish during this week. It might be very confusing to you to even figure out what action to take, but it feels like you need to take some sort of action. You need to break away. You need to, give yourself more freedom. And that's, Jupiter being in your 9th house, wanting more freedom, wanting more adventure, wanting to expand your horizons, through your experience. And there could be someone working against you also. This is Mars in the sign of Pisces. It could be a sibling, an extended family member. It could be a neighbor even, or somebody in your community. There could be some unexpected sort of communication that comes up for you this week that could be very confusing and disorienting and might sort of shake up your plans, especially, as it relates to travel, as it relates to your education. All of that type of thing, as it relates to your beliefs, and that's not just your big overarching philosophical and religious beliefs. This is your beliefs about yourself, your self-talk on a day-to-day basis. That's part of this as well. And so there's a lot up in the air right now. Neptune is stationing to go direct. This isn't going to be a huge influence on you in terms of your personal planets, unless you do have personal planets in Pisces or, Virgo, Sag, or Gemini. But for Aries in general, this is going to be kind of happening behind the scenes. And so this might bring a lot of sort of weirdness on a subconscious level. You might have a lot of images, impressions, sort of archetypes popping up in your life, weird signs, strange synchronicities, that type of thing with that Neptune stationary position. This is a really good time to turn inward, to spend time in solitude, seclusion over the weekend, especially paying attention to those visions, those downloads, reinvigorating your spiritual practice, doing something that's charitable or that helps connect you to other people on that sort of deeper, more emotional, empathic level. Those types of energies. So those are good things to use that energy for, but it's not a super strong energy in the Aries chart, just so you're aware. And so there could be arguments and disputes that come up. There could be a lot of confusion around your ideas and ideals, around your plans for travel, around your beliefs, around, educational pursuits and that type of thing. And there could be somebody working behind the scenes. Mars is in the 12th house of hidden enemies, and it's squaring off to this full moon energy, and it's starting to square off to Mercury, which is retrograde in your 9th house. And so it could even be some sort of someone working against you who's you consider to be a teacher or an authority figure, someone who guides you, someone who you think is wiser than you are. Or it could be that somebody, from behind the scenes is challenging your wisdom, your ideas, your integrity, right? And that could be part of it as well. All right, and for Taurus and Taurus rising, so this energy is happening with the full moon and the this like T-square here. The full moon is happening in your 2nd house of finance. And so this could be the result of the culmination point of something that you seeded involving an investment, involving some sort of financial endeavor in the past. This could be you getting some sort of recognition in terms of, a holiday bonus or something like that, or expecting a holiday bonus and being a little let down because that is Jupiter, right, in this square with Mars in the 11th house of rewards. And so you might have high hopes and high dreams for something. Maybe, you were promised some sort of reward for a lot of the effort that you were putting in the 10th house of career, and maybe that doesn't come through. Or maybe you're expecting to have more money for your holiday travel plans and for, your Christmas or holiday shopping, and it's just not coming through in the way that you wanted it to. This could also be you sort of overshooting in terms of some sort of plan or endeavor that you want to initiate that involves, money, budgeting, investments, the way that you use and utilize your resources, joint finances, other people's money, that type of stuff, paying off debts. And, there's some sort of challenge coming from the 11th house, which is groups of people, which is friends, social networks. It's the people you surround yourself with by choice. But again, it's also rewards that you get from the energy in the 10th house. And so it could be, yeah, that there's a blockage and it's coming from, you know, you not getting what you thought that you were going to get in terms of your sort of payback for your work, right? That could be part of it too. So it just kind of depends on where you're at with that. This is a good time to sort of rebudget and revisit things when it comes to joint finances, investments, debt, taxes, other people's money, which we talked about quite a bit last week in last week's video. So if you haven't seen that, go back and watch and you can get a better idea of the energy for that Mercury retrograde. But, you know, Neptune's going to be stationing in your 11th house. And so this could bring a lot of fogginess, confusion, disillusionment when it comes to your friendships, your social networks, the people that you surround yourself with by choice. And, you know, you might have to sort of look at that a little bit. You could have this moment of disillusionment where the veil drops and you realize that this group of people you've been hanging around with, maybe they're not the best influences on you. Maybe they're not the best friends. Maybe they've been lying to you or deceiving you in some sort of way. Or maybe you've been deceiving yourself and thinking that, hey, I joined this organization. I thought it was like this really great idea. And now you're seeing things a little bit more clearly. And so that could be part of what's coming up for you as well. So yeah, so that's the energy of this week. Okay, so for Gemini and for Gemini rising, this full moon is happening in your sign. So if you have your sun, moon, rising with those first 5 degrees in the sign of Gemini, or even in those last degrees of Taurus for the Taurus rising people that I was just talking about, this full moon is highlighting you. It's highlighting the need to come back into balance by focusing on your own needs, your own self-interests, what you want, need, and desire. It's also reflecting on your self-image, and it could be you getting recognition for something that you did for somebody else or some sort of effort that you put in terms of your work. But it doesn't mean that it's necessarily positive recognition. You might expect to have positive recognition, and maybe it's not everything that it's chalked up to be. It's not everything that you thought it would be. With Mars, you know, in your 10th house, making this T-square between the moon and the sun in your 1st and in your 7th house. Again, if you have that really strong influence on your ascendant and descendant, this is going to be a little bit more intense for you. But there could be sort of a moment of disillusionment. There could be some confusion around maybe the initiation of a really big, important work project, and the need to sort of do something, change something that sort of comes out of the blue. This could also bring arguments and disputes involving business partnership, coworkers, contracts, people in positions of power and authority over you. And so you do need to be aware of that. And if you are compelled to take action this week, especially as it relates to your work, just kind of take a step back over these next 2 weeks, really, because you're going to have Mars coming into that conjunction with Neptune and, you know, coming into that square with Mercury next week. And so there's going to be potential that you're going to have to sort of redo things and revisit old arguments and disputes with coworkers, business partners, that type of thing. This could also bring arguments and disputes in your relationship as it relates to your work. Maybe you're not spending enough time, you know, with your partner, and maybe you want to spend more time focusing on you and your own needs, wants, and desires, but maybe there's something preventing you from doing that. Maybe it's a relationship at work. Maybe it's, you know, a committed partnership in terms of a marriage, something along those lines as well. There's a lot of potential for you to be deceived in particular, Gemini, just because you have that Neptunian energy, especially if your sun, moon, rising is near that 13th degree. So I would say anywhere from 10 to 16 degrees in the sign of Gemini. You know, Neptune's going to be stationing in square with your ascendant or your sun or your moon. And so, you know, coming from the 10th house in particular, like there's potential for someone at your work to deceive you, to sort of throw you under the bus with Mars there. And so just kind of be aware. This is also a potential for you to over exaggerate something about yourself, something about your accomplishments, something about, you know, your abilities out in the world. And you might not even realize you're doing it. With Neptune, sometimes we tend to exaggerate numbers and figures and make things really big and grand, and, you know, especially with that Jupiter energy. And we might think that we might be able to live up to, you know, the hype that we're putting out there about ourselves, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's accurate. And so that could turn into a little bit of a mess later on, especially as we come into next week. So just be aware of what you're saying. Make sure what you're saying is the truth. It's real. It's tangible. It's attached to reality. You know, bragging and overinflating your abilities, that type of thing, which, you know, you may or may not be prone to, but you know, that is a potential there. So just be careful. And it's usually not with Neptune intentional. It's because you're not seeing things clearly, right? So that's for Gemini and for Gemini rising. All right. And so for Cancer and for Cancer rising, this energy is happening in your 12th house. And so the 12th house is the house of rest. So this could be the culmination point of a very busy couple of weeks for you. You have Jupiter moving into your 6th house of work, which makes things a little bit easier, but it can also just expand on your work, especially with Mercury retrograding in your 6th house. You might have to sort of revisit things. You might feel very frantic and sort of hectic in terms of your work right now. And so this is you coming back into balance by spending some time resting, relaxing. You might even be planning like a trip or something like that with, you know, this square going on here, or this T-square going on here with Mars in your 9th house of long distance travel, of adventure. But just know that, you know, your travel plans might not go as planned if that is the case for you, or maybe you're planning on doing something where you're furthering your education by acquiring new knowledge, new wisdom, higher knowledge, belief systems, that type of thing. Or you want to go on a spiritual retreat. You want to spend time in solitude, seclusion, turning inward. But there's too much chaos going on the outside, right? So it's going to be a little bit difficult for you to sort of pull away. But if there was a time to pull away, you know, this is a time for you to at least try to do that, right? Mars is going to be pulling you out of your 12th house. Mars is going to cause you to want to sort of take action and try something new, try something more adventurous. Maybe you're starting a class, maybe you're teaching a class even. That could be part of it as well. But there could be potential for something to come up for you, especially as it relates to your health, because this is the 6th house of health and the 12th house is the house of rest, right? So if you're noticing that you're a little on edge, that you've been working too hard, that your nerves are like really tense, this could be a time where it would be very beneficial for you to pull inward and to spend time, you know, in solitude, which is normally not a thing that people are more inclined to do with the full moon. But for you, because the full moon is in your 12th house, this is a time to rest, you know, in one way or another, but to actively rest. So to do something like, you know, taking a yoga class, like doing something where you're active, but you're also disengaging yourself from the day-to-day grind and the day-to-day reality. With Neptune stationing in your 9th house, this could actually be quite nice for Cancers, honestly, especially if you have your sun, moon rising near that 13th degree. So anywhere from 10 to 16 degrees, I would say you would be feeling this the most. With Neptune stationing in trine with, you know, your sign, and especially if you have those planets at those degrees, this is a time when you might feel more compassionate, more loving, more floaty, you know, more idealistic, more interconnected with people. And so even though there is a bit of tension going on in the chart, it's softened for you by this Neptunian energy. You might be getting a lot of like visions, impressions, downloads, insights. This is again a really great time for you to take time away from the world to listen to the messages that you're receiving, because they might be showing you something and guiding you to, you know, in a new direction in your life. And so you do want to pay attention to that, and especially a new direction as it relates to your own self-interest, your own self-image, and the way that you project your energy out into the world. Maybe you want to be a little bit softer. Maybe you want to be a little bit more relaxed. Maybe you want to be a little bit more compassionate, and you want to show up in that way. All right. And so for Leo and for Leo rising, there is a lot of energy with this full moon in your 11th house, which is the house of friends and social networks and the people that you surround yourself with by choice. So maybe you've been focusing a lot of your energy on your own hobbies, interests, the things that you love to do, your own creative self-expression out in the world. You know, earlier this month, focusing more on your family, your roots, that type of thing. And now it's time to branch out and it's time to connect with your friends, right? It's time to go out there and socialize this week. Just be aware that there could be arguments, disputes, old wounds, old vulnerabilities, old fears and insecurities that are dredged up through this experience. This is also a really intense energy for potential to fall back into old addictions, because this is Mars, you know, in the 8th house. Mars in the 8th house is it's obsessions, right? It's obsessive action, it's compulsions, it is addiction. And with Neptune stationing there as well, there is potential for you to escape into old patterns and old habits. So make sure that if you are going out with friends, these are friends that are good influences on you, that are not going to cause you to, you know, go back to revisit old patterns. It doesn't have to be necessarily drug addictions or alcohol addictions or anything like that. It could just be old habitual patterns of, you know, misbehavior or something that you don't like about yourself that you used to do that that you're going to fall back into, because you're really impressionable with this Neptunian energy, and you're more subject to this influence, right? And you might not even realize that you're re-picking up and taking on those old traits again. So just kind of be aware of your patterning, your conditioning, the way that you're reflecting the energy of your friends if you are connecting with more people this week, because you probably will be with the full moon happening in your 11th house. That's time to socialize. You might be getting a lot of phone calls, text messages, emails, people from the past coming back around. This could also bring up past fears, past addictions, past habits that are, not necessarily the best, obsessions, compulsions, old arguments, old disputes. This could cause you to have to really go in there and address old fears, wounds, and insecurities in a very direct and, willful sort of action-oriented way. So, these are all potentials here for Leo and for Leo rising. Yeah, so that's kind of what's going on here. All right, for Virgo and for Virgo rising, this full moon is happening in your 10th house of career. So there's some sort of culmination point or some sort of recognition or some energy being highlighted this week for you in the area of your public reputation, your work, what it is that you're putting out there into the world. This could be you expecting to get recognized for some sort of effort, some sort of collaboration, partnership that you really put out there and put a lot of effort into. And maybe you fall short, or the praise or the feedback falls short of what you're expecting, or maybe you don't get praise and feedback and maybe you get sort of chewed out instead. That could be part of it too. Recognition isn't always a good thing, but I think it would mostly be positive. It just might be that you're going to sort of you're going to have high expectations for the actions that you're taking this week, or for the results of some action that you've taken in the past as it relates to your work. And maybe you've been focusing a lot more on, your immediate environment, your community, your home, your family, your roots. And, this week, even though it is going to be sort of a holiday week for a lot of people, especially in the United States, even though that's the case, you're sort of forced out into the world and you have to focus a lot of your energy on your career. Maybe it's because you have a business or you work in some sort of industry like retail, where this is a very busy time of year, right? And so you'd rather be focusing on your roots. That's where a lot of the good energy is happening with Jupiter. You have a lot that you have to sort of reorganize, reevaluate, plan, and sort of make adjustments to when it comes to your home and your roots. You're making sure that you're setting things up for yourself with Mercury retrograding in your 4th house and Jupiter coming in after that, and covering those same points. You're looking at what you need to reorganize and do to get your house in order so you can expand in a very positive, sort of beneficial way moving forward for this next year. But at the same time, there could be some sort of hindrance, some sort of arguments, disputes with family members, with close, relationships, especially spouses, right? People who live with you, that type of thing. So there could be arguments, disputes. There could be difficulty in terms of business partnerships that's highlighted this week, in terms of close friendships, contracts, agreements, all close personal relationships. The other thing that's happening is that Virgo, Sun, Moon, and Rising, especially Virgo rising, if you have your rising sign near that 13th degree, so I would say between 10 and 16 degrees, I'm giving it a wide orb because Neptune usually just brings weird vibes, and you'll feel it at least a little bit within that orb, right? But at 13, 14 degrees, you're going to feel that the most. Neptune's going to be stationing on your descendant. And so this could bring a lot of fogginess, confusion, disillusionment as it relates to your partnerships. And again, this is not just romantic partnerships. This is all close personal relationships, but you might be on the receiving end of some sort of lies or deception, or you might just realize that you've been lying to yourself and deceiving yourself about an important relationship. And so the veil might drop over these next couple of weeks, and you might realize it's not what you thought it was, especially if it was a Venus retrograde sort of, rekindling of a relationship. And so, just be aware of that. And, forewarned is forearmed. And, it might be that this partnership that you have high hopes and expectations for, there could be arguments and disputes that come up over the next couple of weeks, and you might realize that it's not what it was chalked up to be. And again, it doesn't have to be romantic, but it could be. But this could be any sort of new partnership, new friendships that came in. I would say, especially with that Venus retrograde energy, because, it just makes sense, right? A lot of people rekindle old flames and have old relationships come back around during Venus retrograde. Virgo. All right, so for Libra and for Libra rising, I need to get like a mug for every sign, or like maybe a sign for it, and then I'll just hold it up so you guys can see. That way it's easier to find everything. I know there's always timestamps, but it would be nice to maybe have some sort of indicator so you can find the timestamps easier. Maybe that'll be my Mercury retrograde project. But anyway, so for Libra and for Libra rising, the energy that's coming up for you, so this full moon is happening in your 9th house. This is the house of travel, expansion, adventure, higher wisdom, higher knowledge. This is, the knowledge and wisdom that you gain through experience. This is your philosophies and belief systems about God, the universe, the world around you. And so this could be the culmination point of some sort of educational pursuit that you've been sort of thinking about, initiating even, or that you've already embarked on. This could be you having to sort of step back and look at the bigger picture, because there's been a lot of energy in your 2nd and 3rd house lately. And so there's been a lot of focus on finance, on money, on accumulating resources. There's been a lot of focus on communication, on day-to-day sorts of tasks involving writing and communication, bureaucratic stuff, paperwork, emails, text messages, phone calls, short distance travel, all of that 3rd house stuff, which right now you're having that Mercury retrograde in that area. So things might be getting a little bit more confusing, intense. And so, this could be you needing to take a step back to see the bigger picture, to see things in a better, sort of more clear perspective. With this square going on here between Jupiter and, the Sun and Mars, which is going to be in your 6th house, it could be that you want to, do something involving travel, or you want to take like a new course or something like that, or you need to study for an important exam, and your work is just really busy, or there's some sort of conflict or dispute or situation that comes up very abruptly that you need to address or readdress, involving, your day-to-day work experience, your health even, that is sort of posing a challenge to you actually taking that step back to getting that bigger picture, broader perspective, or taking that trip so that way you can sort of clear your mind and get away from the day-to-day grind. For you in particular, travel plans could be a little bit more dicey. There could be more mix-ups and hiccups there. And especially in terms of communication, there could be some there could be some arguments, some disputes that come up, especially as it relates to coworkers or people that you associate with through work, and especially as it relates to things like health and daily routines and your day-to-day work experience. You could just be much busier this week, and that could be part of it as well. And so, there's a need to sort of come back into balance by seeing that bigger picture. And there could be some sort of high expectations that you have for being able to disengage from your work, but, duty calls, and you might end up having to go back and do something, or like come into work one day. Maybe you're planning on taking time off for the holidays and traveling, and that just doesn't work out for you, or there's something that causes you to not be able to enjoy it as much, or there are arguments and disputes that get in the way, or some sort of tension. Also, you're going to have Neptune stationing to go direct in your 6th house as well. And this is going to be starting to come into that close conjunction with Mars. And so, this energy is highlighting what's going to be coming up in the next couple of weeks, which could bring a lot of fogginess, confusion, disillusionment in terms of taking action as it relates to your work and to your coworkers, to your work environment. And this could, bring lies, confusion, disputes involving, again, like health, your work, that type of thing. So there could be a moment of disillusionment that comes up for you, where you realize that things were not what you thought they were, and that you were being lied to. And that could come, in all areas, because this is going to be squaring. It's going to be in this conjunction here, but right now it's kind of squaring that Mercury. Mercury's in station with Neptune as I'm saying this. So, you could be on the receiving end of some lies and deception this week. So just be extra careful and extra cautious. It could be even you revisiting something where you're being lied to again or manipulated again, and you realize it all of a sudden, right? And that could be something that comes up for you as well, and you might have to address that, and that could cause the arguments and disputes. All right. For Scorpio rising, this full moon is occurring in your 8th house. I know as a Scorpio rising, moon in the 8th house is always like a really weird time. So full moon in the 8th house, I'm sure will be extra, you know, extra cool for all of you Scorpio risings. Because the 8th house, I mean, it is the Scorpio house, right? It's stuff that you can deal with. It's a lot of intensity. It's dealing with deep-seated fears, insecurities, power and control issues, manipulation, that type of thing. But it could be that you've been focusing really hard on making money, right? This is a lot of energy that's been going on in your 2nd house and is still going on in your 2nd house. So there's a lot of energy around finances, resources, the accumulation of wealth. And maybe this is a culmination point where you're coming back into balance by allowing, you know, an outside source of income to come in or making some sort of investment. This could also you be detaching yourself. This could be you detaching yourself from focusing so much on accumulating money, on resources, on working really hard for a paycheck, that type of thing. So that way you can kind of take a step back and get a bigger perspective on things and detach yourself from such, you know, a heavy focus on material possessions, because, you know, that's part of it as well. This could also bring up some sort of unexpected dispute involving finances. You could have high expectations for something when it comes to your resources, and those expectations might not be met. That doesn't mean that you won't have the resources that you need. It just might mean that you have to sort of go back, revise, re-edit, re-budget, replan your strategy when it comes to, you know, your financial endeavors, because that's going to be Mercury in retrograde highlighted with that square to Mars. And it could be that you sort of overshot a little bit and, you know, you have to take a step back and rein it back in. This could be that you really thought that you could pursue something that you're really passionate about and create money and resources for yourself through doing that. But, you know, maybe you do have to take a step back, and maybe you have to sort of reorient yourself and rethink your plans moving forward. This could bring arguments and disputes involving money and resources that have to do with children, and that could inflate this. You could have high expectations maybe for getting some sort of settlement or child support payment or something like that, and maybe it doesn't come through. This is also going to be Neptune stationing at 13 degrees in the sign of Pisces, which is in your 5th house of play, romance. And this could bring you know, some creativity back into your life, some play, especially like spiritual play or creative play in some sort of way. Usually people who have Pisces on the 5th house cusp, their hobbies and interests are usually either spiritually oriented or, you know, creative in some sort of way, or they like to do things that are charitable and give back. And so this is highlighting that. And, you know, if you do have your sun, moon rising between 10 and 16 degrees in the sign of Scorpio, especially your rising sign, this could be a really nice energy for you. It could help you to feel much more loving, much more compassionate, much more at ease. You know, even amidst all of this sort of more turbulent energy that's going on. So the fogginess and the confusion and all of that, it might not be as difficult for Scorpio rising. It could actually be serving as more of a guide. And so whatever you're feeling like you need to move forward with, whatever you're feeling you need to do in order to change and adapt your identity out in the world, in order to show up in a way that's softer, more compassionate, more loving, more genuine, you know, more interconnected, that's what's going to be coming up, and that's something to pay attention to, especially into this weekend. So yeah, so that's for Scorpio and for Scorpio rising. For Sagittarius and Sagittarius rising, this energy is happening on your ascendant and descendant, right? And so especially if you have your ascendant and descendant at that 0 degree or near that 0 degree, so within the first 5 degrees of Sagittarius, this is going to be a really strong energy pulling you out of focusing so much of your energy on your own needs, your own self-interests, the direction that you want to move into, you know, exercising your will, your own identity, your own image out in the world, what other people think of you, who you want to be, who you want to become. That's been a huge focus for Sagittarius this past couple of weeks. And it still is, right? Because we have sun in your sign highlighting you. It's your time to shine. Also, happy birthday to all of my Sagittarius viewers. You know, this is going to be your solar return coming up. Even if it is this week, this is going to be a culmination point of something for you guys. So, you know, if you have your solar return happening this week, don't, you know, worry about it or anything like that. It's just that there's a culmination point coming where you're coming back into balance. Instead of focusing so much on your own needs, you need to focus a little bit more on your relationships and on the needs of other people. And so, you know, focusing less on what you need in order to satisfy your own goals and plans, your own self-interest, to sort of verify and establish your identity out in the world, to get that recognition that you're craving right now. You're going to have to kind of go back and revisit some stuff and revise some stuff in order to get there over these next couple of weeks with that Mercury retrograde. But, you know, with this full moon, this culmination point in Gemini, this is the culmination point of something that you seeded involving your relationship, involving all of your relationships, really, any sort of close personal relationships, partnerships, contractual agreements, that type of thing. And so there is a need to focus on the needs of the other, focus on the needs of your spouse, focus on the needs of your close friends, your close family members. There could also be potential for arguments, disputes, difficulty, sort of a lot of intensity around your home and family environment. And so, you know, if you are having you know, some sort of family dinner for Thanksgiving or something like that, if you're in the United States, and just kind of be aware that there is going to be more of a potential for bickering. There's going to be more of a potential for you to have high expectations for something that you really want to come through when it comes to your home, family, and property. And those expectations might not be met in the way that you think that they will, or the way that you expect them to. So just, you know, realize that you might have really high hopes and ambitions and dreams when it comes to your property and your home. And it doesn't mean that it won't happen, and it doesn't mean that something won't occur this week that could, you know, point you in the right direction or cause you to be able to initiate something, you know, in the future. It's just that you might be going too hard too fast. You might be sort of overkill in terms of your expectations. You're also going to have Neptune stationing in the sign of Pisces. And so if you have your sun, moon, rising with, you know, within a few degrees of this position, so that's going to be between 10 and 16 degrees, especially at that 13, 14 degrees in the sign of Sagittarius, you might have a lot of confusion, a lot of disorientation, a lot of fogginess. You're already going to be having that because you have Mercury retrograding in your sign, but with Neptune, it's sort of a strange, eerie sense that something's about to occur, that there's some sort of free-floating anxiety, like something's about to happen, something's going on in the ethers, and then it doesn't necessarily always manifest in reality. It's just sort of this strangeness. I always notice this with these Neptune transits, and all of my clients, when I tell them about it, they're like, oh, that's what that is, right? Because it's like, what is that? You know, what is happening? Something has to be happening, but it's usually just Neptune. Something is going on behind the scenes. There's rearranging going on behind the veil, and maybe in another dimension even. But it's not always manifesting in physical reality right away, and it's not always something that's going to be terrible. It's just that you're breaking down the boundaries of who you are and recreating yourself out in the world, right? For Sages, especially at those degrees. And so there could be a moment of disillusionment that comes through some sort of unexpected communication, or some sort of, you know, difficult situation or argument or dispute, or some sort of energy where you sort of overshot as it relates to something you want to create for yourself, for your home, your family, your property. This could also bring arguments and disputes in relationship, especially in close personal relationships, romantic relationships, close friendships, all of that. So just do be aware. Tread lightly. Don't put your foot in your mouth. Sages are sort of infamous for saying things, you know, out of good intention, but they're so truthful that and very blunt that they don't even realize that they're saying something that might hurt somebody else, or that somebody might take the wrong way. And so this is going to inflate that potential right now with that Mercury retrograding in your sign and that Mars square. You might say something that's too direct, too blunt, and especially with that Neptunian confusion and that Mars and Pisces energy, it might not be taken in the way that you intend it, like even more so than normal. So, and you might end up accidentally saying something where you're exaggerating, or you accidentally like lie to someone, which Sagittarians, especially if you have like a strong Sagittarius in your chart, they usually don't lie. That's not a thing. So it's not necessarily that it would be intentional or deliberate. It just might be that you sort of overstep and you sort of misjudge something. So, you know, just be aware of all of that. All right, for Capricorn and for Capricorn rising, this full moon energy is happening in your 6th house of health, of daily routines, of work, and it's in Gemini, right? And so you might find yourself needing to sort of go out in the world and, you know, communicate, work, focus on your day-to-day routines a little bit more. You might find yourself thinking and overthinking things as it relates to your work. You've been having a lot of energy in your 12th house, which is causing you to need to pull inward, to focus on your own internal well-being, your subjective reality, your spiritual practices. This is a time for rest, you know, solitude, seclusion, to go back, re-edit, review, rethink things with that Mercury retrograde there. And Jupiter in the 12th house will bring a lot of benefits just by you taking time out, right, and focusing a little bit less on your day-to-day activities. But this week in particular, you might be pulled out into the world. You might have to focus a little bit more on your work, on your health routines, on your relationships with your coworkers. And there could be, you know, some sort of confusion, disillusionment, arguments, disputes that come up, especially involving communication and miscommunication, and especially involving your work. So that's going to be something that you kind of need to be aware of. It's not necessarily that you might, well, you could potentially be lied to or be deceived, right? This is Mars starting to come into that conjunction with Neptune. This is also, Mars in square with Mercury, which starts next week really intensely, but this is being highlighted, right? And so it could be that you have high expectations for something involving communication, marketing, short distance travel, and your expectations are too idealistic, too expansive, and they don't necessarily meet reality. This could also be that there's somebody working behind the scenes talking badly about you, and so that comes up as it relates to your work. And so you have to go out there, you have to address it. It could be that you trusted somebody and confided in them, and the veil drops and you realize that they weren't who they thought they were and you've been betrayed. And so these are all, different various potentials, but this could really be utilized in a very positive way for, doing something very creative or revisiting something very creative as it relates to communication, writing, right? Connecting with other people through language, engaging with your community. So, thinking back to something maybe you used to do in your past as it relates to those topics and those themes, and maybe thinking about reintegrating that into your life or into your work moving forward so you can feel much more satisfied on a day-to-day basis, when you do have to be out in the world working and focusing on your daily routines and all of that. So, there is positive potential here. Neptune will be stationing at 13 degrees. So if you have your sun, moon, rising in Capricorn near that 13th degree from 10 to 16 degrees, I would give it a smaller orb for Capricorn because this is a sextile. So let's say, 11 to 15 degrees max. It will be stationing in sextile with your ascendant. So this is actually, a nice energy that enhances compassion, love, connectedness, intuition, spirituality, creativity, all of these sorts of energies. And so even if there are arguments, disputes, even if you do have some sort of issue that comes up that's really irritating or some sort of disillusionment in your workplace, you're going to be able to maintain a sense of compassion, a sense of self-love, a sense of empathy for the other, right? That can come up for you. And this is also you integrating more compassion, more connectedness, more softness, and more creativity into the way that you express yourself out in the world, into your own self-image, right? You want to come across maybe as being a little bit softer, a little bit less repressed and responsible and hardworking. Maybe you want to soften up a little bit with all of this 12th house energy and with this Neptune energy that's making a nice aspect to your ascendant. And so that's something that you can think about and maybe start incorporating this week as well. All right. For Aquarius and for Aquarius rising, this full moon is happening in your 5th house, which is the house of romance, play. This is a really important time when you can have some sort of culmination point where something that was seeded involving romance, children, your hobbies, your interests, your passions, the things that you love to do, that can come to some sort of culmination point where you can get recognition for your creative pursuits, your creative endeavors, or whatever it is that you've been putting out there in that respect. This could also just be you wanting to focus more on your hobbies, things that you love to do, as opposed to focusing so much on the needs of the group, socializing, connecting with networks, because that's a lot of the energy that's been going on for you, especially this past week or two. You have Jupiter right now in your 11th house, which is going to bring really great benefits to you through your connections with people. And you have Mercury retrograding right now, which might have you rethinking some of those connections a little bit, or it could have you sort of getting communication from people from your past and reintegrating those into your social networks, right? But right now, socializing is sort of on your mind and there's a lot going on there, but it's like, okay, I'm spending all my free time hanging out with my friends. I'm spending all my free time connecting with all these people via social media or via, this club or this organization I'm a part of. And, what about my passions? What about the things that I love to do, right? So that could be part of this energy and what you're focusing on, this week. The other thing that's happening for you is that there's going to be that square happening to the 2nd house. And so, there could be some culmination point where you're thinking that you want to focus more on the things that you love because you love to do it, right? Connecting with your inner child, connecting with play, doing some sort of romantic grand gesture for your partner or something along those lines. And what's stopping you is money and the pursuit of resources. And so you could actually have some high expectations potentially for some sort of bonus or some sort of money that might come in, some rewards or or some rewards for the hard work that you put in your 10th house of career. And you know that when it comes to pass, it might not meet your expectations, and that could bring arguments and disputes around resources. There could also be arguments and disputes with friends involving resources, or with romantic partners, especially like love affairs and flings and things like that, again involving resources, involving money. You know, with Neptune stationing to go direct in your second house, there could be a moment of disillusionment where you thought that you had enough money for something, or you thought that your resources were you had all your ducks in a row, and then something comes up and the veil drops and you realize that you weren't seeing things clearly, and maybe you overspent or overshot something. And so these are all potentials for Aquarius this week. And there could be arguments and disputes with friends and things like that. So just kind of be aware of what's going on here. You might not be able to see the situations clearly right now. So there might be a lot of confusion and disorientation around all of these areas of life, especially around finances and especially around your friends, your social networks, all of that. But that doesn't, so you might not, if something is happening and it's you really feel like you need to address it, just realize that you might not know the whole story yet. So, maybe take a breather, wait a minute before you jump in and do something to change it. All right. And finally, for Pisces and for Pisces rising, this energy is happening in your 10th and your fourth house. So the full moon is happening in your fourth house of family, home, property. And so you've had a lot of energy around your midheaven lately, around your 10th house of career, public reputation. So a lot of energy being pumped out into the world, right? Focusing on that. And now this full moon highlights the need to come back to your roots, come back home, come back into balance between work and life, right? What's important to you at home? What do you want to come home to? Looking at things like that. This could bring arguments and disputes, or some sort of disillusionment, or some sort of expectations that are not met. So you might have high hopes for something involving your career and public reputation, and maybe some rewards that you want to come through that area of your life. And you might have this moment of disillusionment where there's an argument, a dispute, or you have to sort of redo something, and you don't necessarily get those rewards that you're hoping for. This could also be, arguments and disputes with coworkers, with people in positions of authority. This could also be tension and the need to take action as it relates to your home, your family, your property. So maybe, a roommate situation that kind of gets out of hand, or there could be potential for some emotionally charged conversation, especially if you're meeting up with your family for the holidays and things like that. So just kind of be aware of what's going on there. You do have Neptune stationing to go direct in your sign. And so this is going to be a huge influence for Pisces, because this is your rising sign, the ruler of your rising sign. So Neptune is the ruler of your chart. And you also have Jupiter, which is the co-ruler of your chart, squaring Mars. So again, you might be overly ambitious about things this week, about doing something that relates to your own self-interest. And you might not actually be able to see what's going on very clearly this week. And so, it's not necessarily the time to take new action in general, but especially for Pisces, just because I don't think you'll see the whole picture. I think you might have high dreams, high hopes, high ideals, but you're not seeing things realistically, and so it might not work out the way you want it to. But with that Neptune stationing to go direct on your ascendant, this makes you feel very ungrounded, even for a Pisces. I'm just kidding. But yeah, so it can be very ungrounding, disorienting, confusing. Again, that eerie sense of ominous energy, like something's going on behind the scenes, behind the veil, and you can't quite put your finger on what it is or what's sort of manifesting. It can bring this free-floating sense of anxiety, like something's not quite right, but then nothing really happens. It also this could be sort of a reversal of fortune or a reversal in circumstances for you, especially if you have your sun, moon, rising, or especially your rising, I would say, near that 13th degree in the sign of Pisces. So anywhere from 10 to 16 degrees. I would say even more than that, like 9 to 17 degrees for this conjunction here. You might be feeling this energy, right? And so this might cause you to feel much more compassionate, much more psychic, much more spiritual, mystical. It can bring a lot of really magical sort of manifestations into your life, but it can also make it so you feel very ungrounded, very confused. It's very difficult to make decisions, and it's very difficult for you to see things clearly. So right now, more than ever, Pisces is going to be seeing things through this lens of rose-colored glasses. So you're seeing what you want to see in a lot of situations, and this can cause problems, especially as we come into next week and the following week when we have this Mars conjunction to Neptune. So just kind of pay attention to what's going on for you right now. This is like one of those energies where time stops and stands still, and you kind of need to pay attention to the themes and the different energies that come up for you this weekend, because it's trying to show you something. It's giving you a snapshot. It's showing you that, hey, something is going on here. And when Neptune moves direct, when the ruler of your chart moves direct, you need to change something and do something differently moving forward. So pay attention to those signs, synchronicities, visions, impressions, especially dreams, all of those Neptunian things. Also, this could be a time this weekend when you really want to escape from reality through drugs, alcohol, fantasy, illusion, even, through spirituality, using that as a means to escape. Just be very cautious about all of those things. For Pisces, in particular, this is not really the best time to engage in, anything that's going to disconnect you and cause you to feel much more ungrounded than you already would be feeling. So, just be aware of that with your holiday plans and overindulging and all of that as well. But yeah, so that's the energy for all 12 signs. So thank you guys again for watching my video and for subscribing to my channel. And if you have any questions, or if you just want to let me know how you're doing, feel free to comment below. I always love reading your comments. And yeah, and you can always book a reading with me if you would like to get a more personalized interpretation of the energy in your chart. And so, that link is in the description below as well. So I hope you all have a really wonderful week, and thank you again. Bye, everyone.